actually, you want to sit there? Okay, that's good, thanks. All right, well, thanks, Mr. Lloyd, for coming back. Your second time here. This is wonderful to have you again. We appreciate it. All right. Yes, okay. All right, so yeah, I had informed everyone who was patiently waiting that you were coming in for a landing with the DeLorean, but I got misinformation. So anyway, sorry about that mix-up. All right, good. All right. So we're going to have a lot of questions from the audience. I don't know if you wanted to just start off by engaging us. Or I don't want to put you on the spot.
Questions?
All right.
Read a little bit about you, and I know you worked with Meisner. How did Meisner training, what kind of advice can you give with all the characters that you got here? What you got from Meisner?
Meisner had his definition of acting somehow really resonates. It's behaving truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And that kind of sums it up. And that's what you always try to do, is to make the situation you're living in, that the script gives you, credible and believable. That you're behaving in a way that expresses what the situation is about. So that's what I've always tried to do, regardless of what kind of character I'm playing, whether it's comedy, tragedy, that's the task, to study the situation and how would I feel being in that situation, how would I behave in that situation, to make it believable. Yes?
Did you play the part of the wayward son in the Neil Simon play God's Favorite? I couldn't find a reference on that, but I thought that I had read somewhere that you did that.
No, I can't find a reference either. Not me. Thank you.
Just interested, as a young actor, your first major motion picture role being in a movie like Cuckoo's Nest.
Right.
What did you really learn from that experience with that great cast?
Golly, where do you stop? Where do I stop? I've been endeavoring to get into film for some time before then, without any success. I mean, not even coming close. So I kind of figured some actors don't make the bridge from theater to film or to the screen, and I just thought, well, that's where I'm headed over this lifetime to theater, which isn't so bad. And then Cuckoo's Nest came along. I guess one thing I learned was that you don't have to, in the theater, you got to carry to the back row. And film, all you have to do is carry it that far, so if you're not careful, you kind of overact, and film is like, comes in close to really see what's going on in your face, not the kind of expressions you make, but what you're feeling comes through. And in the theater, you have to project that. But that camera's right there, and whatever's happening with you registers. And that was a big lesson. And then just watching that. Watching Jack Nicholson work, I was a real fan of his before I ever knew I was going to do the film. I just thought he was amazing, and to see his flexibility and his daring, his willing to try things, and the willingness to fall on his face, try something, if it doesn't work, you do something different on the next take, and always never repeating himself. Every take he would do something different, and I find myself the same way. I'll do something, and even if I can tell it worked okay, I'm thinking, yes, but this could have been like that, or I could have done this, a little more of that. So I learned a lot, and it was a fabulous cast, and the director, Bill, was So it was a big, people ask me, what is your favorite film? And, you know, I've done a lot of films, I feel good about, and were great to make. But Cuckoo's Nest was particularly special, because it was my first one, and yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Christopher, great body of work from stage, screen, TV. I mean, even like a Klingon commander. What was your toughest character to get in the form of? What was the toughest stretch for you to work as?
Oh, let's see. I almost feel like going back to Cuckoo's Nest
It
again.
was the Cuckoo's Nest?
Because the character I had to bring a lot for the short time he was on screen, particularly at the very end. There's a moment after the Indian throws the water machine through the window and escapes. And I didn't know they were going to shoot that moment. It wasn't in the script to be shot, but I understood I'd done a lot of work about who my character was and how I felt about things, and then suddenly just went around the room getting reaction shots to that. And I felt really good about it because I'd done a lot of homework. I didn't know I was going to, so, and it was a serious role, you know, for comedy, it doesn't quite go serious in the same way. But there's other things, like, I kind of find every time I get a script, it's just as scary as the last one. You know, it's just trying to really capture that character's reality. And sometimes I think I got it. You know, I study it, I get in there for the first day and I realize I don't know what I'm doing. This is not, you know, so it's always a challenge, all the time.
I was wondering, what made you pick and accept the role of Uncle Fester? It's one of the most unique. Uncle Fester.
What about?
What did you pick and choose that role? It's one of the most unique.
Why did I
roles.
pick and choose it?
Yeah. How did you feel about it? What motivated you in that movie? It's such a unique role for you, sir.
I grew up on Uncle Fester. There was a magazine, the New Yorker magazine. I don't know if you know. I think I'm stepping on a bomb here. When I grew up, there was a weekly issue. Came to the house every week with Charles Addams cartoons. And very often, one of the Charles Addams cartoons would be of the Addams family. And very often it would be Uncle Fester. And when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I was intrigued by Uncle Fester. I kind of dug him. I dug his, you know, his mischief and his silliness and all that kind of stuff. So I was a fan of Uncle Fester growing up. And then decades later, I got a call, would I like to do the film, Uncle Fester? And I was like, you know, this can't be happening. And on the one hand, I was thrilled, you know, and it was a great cast. I don't know, wonderful cast and all that. But on the other hand, I thought Uncle Fester is round, he's got a round, bald head, and he's kind of short and squat, and he has to be that because that's part of the humor, is what the guy looks like. And so I thought, how is this possible? Because I'm not any of those. But we worked it out.
It's very good.
But I was just, you know, really, I loved doing that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any interesting stories from Star Trek 3?
Interesting on Star Trek 3. I don't know if I have any story that's really remarkable. I know I was warned a lot about. So the actor I have the fight with at the end. He's Captain Kirk. People are saying, "Oh, he's not easy to work with. You're going to be problems." And I was a little bit intimidated by all that, but we had a great time, even though I lost. That was good. I had a lot of makeup. I used to, they were shooting at Paramount for most of the film, I think, and I'd be there at 3:30 in the morning, calls at 7, because there was a lot of makeup and stuff. So it was lower makeups, which I don't mind. But I don't recall any. The most surprising thing was that they cast me. You know, for Captain Kirk. I loved it. You know, it's delicious to do a villain, especially somebody who has no conscience. He just, whatever way he can achieve what he's going to do, kill people, destroy, he even destroys his girlfriend. I don't know if anybody, he had a girlfriend or a woman in his life who was on another spaceship, and he calls to tell her, I'm going to have to blow you up. Because I got to do this and that, I got to blow you up. That's kind of fun. Yes?
I guess the follow-up to that, do you prefer playing villains over playing a good guy?
No, again, it's the basic task is to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances, whether it's drama or comedy, to try to make whatever character I'm doing really believable, and find in the character what people connect with, you know, so that it means something to them, whether it's serious or comedy. So I don't have a real preference, you know. I love doing comedy, but I love getting my teeth into a real gritty part.
Do you have any interesting stories for your time casting as Doc Brown?
Any interesting stories?
Yeah, just like recollections from when you were doing that. Maybe with Michael J. Fox
During the
or-
Back to the Futures
Yeah.
series. I mean, it was 3 different films. There should be something.
Yeah.
Nothing just jumps right up as I mean, the whole film was an adventure, you know. Interestingly, this last week, Michael J. Fox has his new show, and I'm doing an episode on it. And we were shooting it last week, and I went back to New York tonight to do a couple of more days on it, and it's a pretty amazing reunion. You know, it's a wonderful thing. But I do know that almost, I think every scene in all 3 Back to the Future movies there's something incredibly urgent going on. It's just, it never ceases. And, you know, the space-time continuum is hanging on a thread. And at any moment, things are just going to go completely out of control. And all these shots, there's things moving here, things moving there, this happening there. So it's not just the actors, you know, not just Marty and Doc. It's all the stuff going around behind them and all that, which has to be coordinated. And I remember afterwards I got a part in a film. I don't even remember what film. Well, all I'm doing is sitting on a couch talking to one other person, and that's all that's happening. And I thought, my God, this is nice. You know, it's always, Back to the Future, every shot, there was so many things going on at the same time. So that's about that.
When you were cast as Kruge in Star Trek 3, was the role originally supposed to be a Romulan and then it changed over?
I'm sorry?
When you were cast in Star Trek 3 originally, was it supposed to be a Romulan before they changed to a Klingon? Or was,
No.
because I remember in the Taxi episode, you're actually making references to Romulans. I forget what context of the episode.
I don't think there's any connection. I don't know, because I was not, just because it just didn't happen, I was not a big follower of Star Trek. So I didn't know the history, the relations, and whatever. I don't know. Maybe.
Not so much a question, but more of a request.
Yeah?
Grace us with some
Uh-oh.
Reverend Jim.
What?
Can you grace us with some Reverend Jim?
We don't. Please don't mind, in taxi, we'd have a break. We'd have a hiatus or off on vacation. Every once in a while, come back, and I couldn't get myself back in the group, and as Reverend Jim. I'd be floating around trying, having a little difficulty getting back into the character. And then after a while, without really thinking about it, I would start thinking about my older brother, he's passed away, 22 years older than I. And he didn't drink, he didn't smoke, he was straight out, but his facial expression most of the time was kind of like that. And I just think about my older brother, and the Rev was back.
Are you going to make it Back to the Future 4?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. They may make more of the Back to the Future games, the animated Back to the Future games, but I don't think it's going to be a 4.
If you do, there's only one place you can go, medieval times, because if you went to Dinosaur Age, the DeLorean would get eaten.
You know what?
Because if you went to Dinosaur Age, the DeLorean would get eaten, so the only time it would be medieval was on the
Thank you. I did a kind of theater in LA. They did a night where they played all 3 films, one after the other, and then had a Q&A afterwards. And somebody like this gentleman here raised his hand and said, Mr. Lloyd, what's it like play? Mr. Lloyd, what's it like not having to put on old age makeup anymore? It was the same reaction then, too.
Like the gentleman before asked a bit of a request, could you say that line from Suburban Commando, the one about being frozen and all that?
Oh, I hear that quoted, but I haven't seen the film so long, so I'm not sure.
I was frozen today.
I was frozen today.
The ensemble cast on Taxi was just brilliant. It was like really great jazz, and they're all improvising at the same time. And that's how it seems to me on this side of the television. On your side, did you get the sense of that you guys are just creating something so unique and so awesomely original?
Yes, I was. When I lived in New York. I did a lot of theater in New York, and then Cuckoo's Nest came out, kind of opened up the possibility of doing more film work. So I moved to L.A. and I told my agent I don't want to do sitcoms. I have to confess I had a bit of an attitude. New York actors in the theater, you go to L.A. and do sitcoms, you're selling your soul to the devil and all that kind of stuff. And eventually he kept getting me to go and meet this person with this sitcom, and I was reluctant because I didn't want to do sitcoms for whatever reason. And then I got this thing to go up and meet the people for Taxi. And I remember I was there, and I was in there early, and I sat, and nobody knew me, and the company, that cast, that superb cast, were rehearsing a scene. And I looked at that, and I thought, shit, you know, all the time I spent in New York, you might see that once in 100 years. That kind of ensemble working together, the personalities, and the quality of the acting, and the writing and everything. And I thought, man, this is magic, you know. And I never lost that feeling. It was a wonderful group who all loved working together, and great writers. You know, in a sitcom or TV, it's the writers that make it. They have to make a show that works week after week after week, 24. Yeah, and so it was wonderful. Great experience.
You have so many really iconic characters, and it seems like you've really deliberately chosen your roles over the years. Has there ever been a role you were offered that you turned down and then later looked back and thought you could have done something with it?
The only one I can think of really, which was not a good career move, I turned down an offer to be to have a part in a film that Martin Scorsese was directing, and out of stupidity or something, you know. But it was a part in the film, and I thought, this really isn't it for me. And since then, I thought, what was I doing? What was I thinking of? You know, and I guess you make mistakes. You know, your perspective is a little bit not as broad as it might be. So that's happened to me in that regard. But I don't turn down much. I like to work, and if there's some connection I can make with a character, and I get a feeling that the director and the script's got something, I'll go for it, you know, because I like to work, I like doing it.
Talking about iconic characters and everything like that.
I'm sorry?
Talking about iconic characters that you played and everything like that. The character Willy Wonka in Gobstopper, you got to take on a role that was already played before. How did it feel to put your own little stamp on it?
Oh, I loved it. I wasn't too acquainted with what had been done before, whatever, but I loved doing that. I just had, somebody was talking to me the other day how they wished somebody grabbed it and made a film out of it.
Yeah,
I would have loved it, you know. I think they're still thinking about that, you know, but I had a great time. That was fun.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you were in Roger Rabbit, when you're like holding like Roger by the neck and stuff. Well, can you just kind of talk a little bit about that? Because did you like actually have somebody in your hand, or was that a lot of using your imagination? Because I know back then the effects were obviously a lot harder and different to do than it is now.
Yeah, well, they were very helpful all that show. First of all, we had a comedian, Charlie Fleischer. I don't know if that rings a bell with anybody here. Charlie Fleischer is a comedian, and he could do very wacky, off-the-wall kind of stuff. And he was on the set as Roger Rabbit all the time. And he made up a kooky costume, but he was the voice of Roger Rabbit. And he was always off camera, so that when we were talking Roger Rabbit, there was a man there being Roger Rabbit, talking, saying the lines and doing the dialogue with it. And then they made dummies of, like kind of weighted foam rubber dummies of all of Roger Rabbit, the weasels, and I forget one other characters. And we would practice before we'd shoot it, holding the dummies, you know, so that, and doing the movements we would do in front of the camera. with the dummies so that we got a feeling of the weight, because they were weighted like, with a weight. And we had a pantomist who guided us in what, even though we've got nothing in our hands, what muscles we would be using if we had something of weight that we were carrying or hitting or whatever. So that, and we would rehearse all that before we would shoot it, and then they take all of that away and we'd shoot it. But we would have done the work, hopefully, to convince the audience that we're actually dealing with three-dimensional, weighted, characters. Yeah, so we did what we could. Yep.
Out of all the characters you played, which one do you think you like the most?
What do I like the most?
Yeah. Which one do you think you relate to the most?
I don't know. It's tough because I like them all. But I certainly One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Doc Brown. There's some lesser. I did a film called Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. Really, if you haven't seen it, it's worth your time, I hope, I think. And I love the character that I had in that. It was a really special character.
I think he was asking which one you were most similar to.
Oh, what I was most similar to. The Reverend Jim. Good question. I'm not sure. That's going to keep me thinking for a while. Yeah, I have to think about that. Yes.
Can you give us a typical Reverend Jim response?
Okay, boss.
Do you ever find yourself at odds with a director on a project where you don't trust that judgment, so you're having some conflict? How do you handle that?
Not seriously. Not whether it was just such a complete difference that it was. Yeah. It's funny. I had an acting class where it was very tempting when you get a script to want to maybe you say something normally in a way that the script doesn't say it. Maybe they worded it and phrased it in a way that you would not normally say the same thing, and you kind of want to change it. You like to change it so that it would feel more comfortable and natural to say it. But I had a class where you couldn't do that. You had to use the words that were written there, but get the message across in the same way. When you do that, it forces you to sort of change who you are, And it's the same with a director will say, that's interesting what you're doing, but I'd like you to do it this way. And you want to protest. You want to say,
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but then I found that if he's firm about it, whatever, you gotta deal with it, and I'll think about it, and eventually I'll come to say, okay, yeah, I see how I can do that and still feel it works. You sort of have to, because the director's, he's got a concept for the whole deal, and as an actor, you may well have a concept as well, but you're just a part of it. So you have to fit in what the director is trying to accomplish. Yeah, so you work, okay, what's it this way, how does that go and fit in, whatever. And I've usually found eventually, I'll figure it out. Yeah. Like that. So who did that? You?
First of all, I really just want to thank you. A lot of the characters that you played over the years have definitely helped to shape my childhood, and are definitely one of the reasons why I got into acting. And I'm recently getting my degree in theater acting. And one of the things that I have always continually found hard about acting is when you're doing so many shows over such a long period of time, doing the same character and the same blocking, how hard it is to kind of be completely invested and do everything with the same amount of chutzpah as you have, as you were on opening night. Do you have any advice as to how to keep
like
that going?
if you're in a play that has a long
Yeah.
run and trying to keep the life in it.
Right.
I think one thing is when you're working with the other actors, it's never going to be exactly the same every performance. And that you allow yourself, if they say something and it has a somewhat different inflection, or, let that affect the way you respond rather than having a programmed approach, you know what I mean? So and then the audiences are always different. Every audience has a different thing. So you just go into it fresh like that. You don't know what the audience, whether they're going to take to the show tonight, take to you or not, or whatever. And at the same time, because the other actors are in the same situation, they're not sure, I have to admit that I've never been in a long run, and part of it is because I like to keep doing new things. So I haven't really faced that direction, but I kind of. My acting teacher had an exercise that was called a word game, where you'd say a word to someone and they repeat the word, and they go back and forth like that, and eventually it begins to change, because one or the other of you says the word a little differently. Then you pick up on that and say it differently. And it's kind of like that, and whatever you do.
Well, thank you very much.
Mr. Lloyd, you have to call it her.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Was it fun being on Raising Hope?
Yeah. Raising Hope, that's when I see a DeLorean at the end, right? Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun because I'm like kind of a straight-laced accountant or something like that. I'm doing the books for a family, and then I discovered he's into a DeLorean. And I had nothing to do with Doc Brown. It was just, it was cool. I had a lot of fun with that.
One of my favorite of your guest appearances was on West Wing.
Yeah.
And was anything that you can say about working on that show?
Did
you, I guess, did you audition or did they call you for it?
They called me, and I loved it because I was I find myself trying to not be stereotyped as a wacky, funny guy. I love those roles, but I wanted to get into more serious roles, and he was a serious man.
Yes.
He was in there. He had a serious task. And he was in a suit. He was a normal, concerned human being about whatever the issue was. And I just loved that opportunity and working with, help me out.
I'm trying to remember, was it either Rob Lowe or John Spencer? Or was it,
Huh? Well, the actor.
The actor. Rob Lowe? Was it Rob Lowe, Sam Seaborn, Bradley Whitford?
What was the show again?
West Wing.
West Wing, no,
You were a professor. I thought, yeah.
yeah, but West Wing, who was?
Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen.
Okay, yes.
Doing scenes with Martin Sheen, I just
Okay,
love it.
that's right, you were with him as well.
Yeah, I have a lot of regard, admiration for his work, so it was great having scenes with Martin Sheen. You know, being taken seriously. Yeah, I love it.
You were the best Reverend Jim they could have been. Does that bother you that that's what most people would think of you as? When they see you?
What?
As Reverend Jim.
That doesn't bother me.
You're fabulous. It's
I
like,
kind of love it.
so does
But
everybody else.
It's funny, kind of generational, because Reverend Jim was of a certain moment in time. Doc Brown is.
Yeah, but Reverend Jim, like, well, I guess generation, you're right. 'Cause it stands out in my mind as the person.
Reverend Jim lovers and taxi lovers are a little more senior than most of them. That's got nothing to.
The year of the future in Back to the Future 2 is coming up in only 2 years, 2015. Are there any plans to commemorate that anytime soon?
Yeah, I don't know anything specific, but they are planning to celebrate it. I'm not sure how. But,
With Michael J. Fox?
oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Two greats. Sorry.
If you could go back to any year in time, which year would you go?
I don't know. It's vast. It's vast. Well, I suppose just to pick one other, to be alive and around, observing the age of dinosaurs. I mean, to look around and see the creatures that existed then, you know, assuming that you're transparent and, and have no odor. You know? I mean, you know, once in a while I see a picture, or I go to a museum and I see these immense animals, and they used to wander around. You know, to see that, I wouldn't mind doing that.
Excuse me, Mr. Lloyd. 10 of, so I just want to let you know.
What time should we start?
1:15.
Okay, a couple more. Yes.
Out of theater, television, and movies, what would you say is your favorite venue to perform in? Do you have a particular favorite?
I guess I prefer film over TV because there's more latitude to do things. TV is a little bit confined, but you know what the sponsors want, what the network wants, and so there's a little more censorship. And also there's a time frame that's really, you know, forces things. Film is more liberal. There's more. You can go further with the material and all of that. And theater is where I started out. So I love the way film. But theater is like going home, you know, and that's where my roots really started. So I love doing theater, but I love doing.
Mr. Lloyd, sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. My question was kind of more just your thoughts on, we're here talking about all these really iconic roles. You're such a role in pop culture. And obviously, like, with movies like Back to the Future, by the time you were on the third one, you knew you were making classics. But what is it like just to be such a, you're kind of ungenerational. I mean, there's a little kid over there dressed like Marty McFly. Like, is that kind of surreal to you just to be such a cemented part of pop culture, like, for pretty much forever at this point? We're all talking about things you've done so long ago, and they're still so current.
I guess it's a wonderful feeling to have had those opportunities, you know. And it sort of surprises me, because when I started out, I had very little confidence. In acting classes, I'd sit in the back and hope that I would be overlooked before the clock ran out, because I was afraid to get up and work. And I had a lot of deep insecurity, but I had sort of a persistence that kept me at it. And it's kind of amazing to me that I've accumulated these roles that I've done that has meant a lot to a lot of people. So just keep working.
Thank you. I'm sure we all thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Okay.
Thank you, once again, Mr. Lloyd, very much. If you have any questions.